So let's go on to the next story here. It's an article from Newsweek, and it talks about how Bernie Sanders, according to a lot of Democratic insiders, Bernie Sanders is the next person in line to face Donald Trump in 2020. So, putting aside any primaries and stuff, a lot of the people within the party are under the impression that Bernie Sanders is going to be the next person to take on Donald Trump. It's obviously not based on any kind of mathematical calculations or anything. This is just people within the party that think this. And this is not from the politicians. This is from the insiders. It's from the specific strategists, people that have worked on campaigns, people that, maybe even have their own favorites. So let me just read different parts of the article here. So the title of the article is Bernie Sanders will face Donald Trump in 2020 election, Democrats say. The article is written by Nicole Goodkind. It starts out by saying the 2020 presidential election is Senator Bernie Sanders' race to lose, according to a new survey of more than a dozen top Democratic strategists. The survey, conducted by The Hill, reveals a Democratic field crowded with old faces. At a time when the party could use some fresh blood, most contenders for commander-in-chief have been around for decades. Sanders, who will be 79 years old in 2020, currently leads the pack. Quote, his people have never gone away, Democratic strategist Brad Bannon told The Hill. And he has a loyal core following out there that will be with him come hell or high water. Sanders is the most, and that's end quote. Sanders is the most popular politician in America, with an approval rating of 75%, according to a recent Harvard-Harris poll. So it just goes on to explain here that Bernie Sanders has been touring the country with Our Revolution, which is his super PAC, his organization, talking about Medicare for All, his Medicare for All bill, which has, I believe, 16 subscribers from the Democratic Party. It says he still considers himself a Democratic Socialist. And it also says other Democratic contenders for 2020 include former Vice President Joe Biden, which I mentioned on the show last week, Senators Elizabeth Warren, who I mentioned last week as well, Kamala Harris, Sherrod Brown, and former Massachusetts Governor Deval Patrick. I'm surprised Cory Booker isn't on that list. So yeah. And at the end of the article, it says, but overall, it's a weak field, said political strategist Phil Singer, who served as press secretary on Clinton's 2008 presidential run. You have a bunch of Celine Dion's, but there's no Beatles, he said. Okay. So my take on this is, yes, Bernie Sanders is an obvious front runner. I mean, that you would be stupid to not think he's going to be at least considered. He's going to at least be considered as somebody that's going to run, putting aside whether he's actually going to win or whether he's whatever. But he's definitely going to be one of the top people there. He not only does his popularity among his own constituents, but among the whole country, 75% is a ridiculous number. I mean, there's nobody. I don't think there's anybody within 10 points. Maybe 10 points. Maybe a little. Maybe about 10 points, but no closer than that. I would say. There's nobody that's closer to him than that, I would say. But the general take that I got from this is, yes, Bernie Sanders is running. All those other people are probably going to run too. Bernie Sanders is definitely the front runner. But I think this is a little bit of a warning shot from the Democratic strategists and insiders and stuff. And these are people that are paid by the party to say certain things that the party leadership is going to want to hear, and they basically pay them to say certain things and make their whatever predictions their little predictions that they want. In this case, I think what these Democratic strategists are doing is they are giving a signal to the establishment that, listen, Bernie Sanders is coming again. Bernie Sanders is definitely going to run again. And this is something I guarantee you this is something Bernie Sanders knows. Bernie Sanders knows that they know this. So Bernie isn't stupid. He's not going in there thinking, "Oh, I got this thing sewn up. No problem. I'm going to become the 2020 nominee, blah, blah, blah." That's not the case at all. But what he is doing is, what they are doing is they're warning all these insiders, all these establishment types. They're telling them that Bernie is going to run. He is going to be in this race. He is going to be in this race in 2020. Everybody be warned. Everybody keep a lookout. Everybody make sure, keep your eyes peeled so you know that Bernie is going to run, so that we know, what to expect this time. Because what happened in 2016, in this past election, specifically in the primary, is nobody saw Bernie coming. They did not expect, they did not expect Bernie to run. B, they did not expect all the attention, all the fanfare, all the crowds for him, the people that were supporting him. They did not expect him to come out for him like they did. That was completely unexpected. People were like the Democratic strategists and the establishment were completely floored by how much support Bernie was actually getting, and they basically, they had to basically, put together a bunch of plans, a bunch of strategies to combat him and fight against him. That's why they got the help of the media a lot to write hit pieces on him. They got the Daily News, or was it the Daily News? I think that did that interview with him, and they twisted his words, and then the Washington Post released 16 negative articles about him in 16 hours, and this and that, all this stuff that happened during the primary. And these are all things that the Bernie supporters and, the Bernie campaign certainly remember. So they know what to expect. The Bernie supporters are definitely the ones that are going to remember it much better, because they're going to be the ones who are going to be making sure it doesn't happen again in the future. So in 2020, certainly leading up to 2020. But they definitely want to put that signal out there so the Democratic establishment knows that Bernie is running, and that they can plan everything they want to plan as far as what kind of strategies and ideas and shit like that, all those kind of things. They want to decide those things that they can use against Bernie ahead of time. So if Bernie, let's say, is running against Joe Biden, let's say he's running against Kamala Harris, let's say he's running against Elizabeth Warren, who I think it's either going to be Elizabeth Warren or it's going to be Bernie Sanders. I don't think both of them are going to be running. Not winning, running. I don't think both of them are going to be running, because I think Bernie and Elizabeth Warren are too good of friends to try and one-up each other. But who knows? I mean, anything can happen. It's, 2-3 years from now. So anything can happen within the next 2-3 years. But generally, based on the fact that they are very close friends and they've worked each other on a lot of different policies and supported each other in each other's races and all that stuff, I don't see them going at each other in a presidential primary to run for president. So I don't think that's necessarily going to happen. But all those other people, Kamala Harris, I think even Cory Booker is going to be thrown in there, Deval Patrick, for sure, Joe Biden, all those people. And those people are all definitely going to be in the race. They're definitely going to be considered by the Democratic establishment and the Democratic voters, definitely. And they definitely want to put that out there, man. They want to make sure that they see Bernie coming, and they see, they don't underestimate Bernie, essentially. Now, ironically, what the establishment on the Democratic side ended up doing is they ended up underestimating both Bernie and Trump. But with Bernie, for what it's worth, they did beat him, quote unquote. They cheated enough, they rigged the primary enough to beat Bernie. They did not obviously do that with Trump. With Trump, they definitely did not see Trump coming. And as many people know, they basically made, according to WikiLeaks, they basically made Trump as the Pied Piper on the Republican side. They made him out to be this Pied Piper candidate. Him, Ted Cruz, and I believe it was Ben Carson. They made those three candidates out to be the candidates that the Hillary Clinton campaign I'm talking about here. They're the ones, those three other people that they made out to be the candidates that they would prefer to face, trumping one of them. So it ended up being Trump. They definitely didn't want to face somebody like Jeb Bush. They didn't want to face Marco Rubio, John Kasich, these people that are more establishment types, that are much more polished. They're not as off the cuff a little bit, as I guess you could say. They don't have much of an anti-establishment streak going. They're just mostly going with the flow and stuff. Whereas people like Carson, Cruz, and Trump, those are all people that are, even though they are, in my opinion, are still establishment types in many ways, and Trump has definitely proven that he is like that they do have rhetoric that pushes more of an establishment tone. I'm sorry, anti-establishment tone. So that was more, it was more of like that kind of stuff that they saw from those three, and they wanted to push those people as the candidates they wanted to face. So they were definitely making sure that was going to be the people that they could have faced, so that they could could have beaten them easier. So, yeah, it's a really, it's a very sneaky, typical establishment move by these people to do these kind of things, because this is how they know they can get by without having to work too hard. So they just see, let me just get the easiest candidate to face, hopefully beating him or her, and then it'll be easier for me when I end up going into the general election. And these are the people they want to boost up, and these are the people they want to make out to be much more mainstream instead of the Jeb Bush types. So, I mean, it's smart in many ways, but if you're going to do that, you definitely have to keep your eyes peeled when the situation comes to where you're going to be facing this person, because they obviously did not take Trump seriously, and all they did was just attack Trump as a sexist and a racist and a crazy person, and he's so nutty, and he's all of his supporters are from the alt-right and the deplorables. Like, it was basically the same strategy they used with the Bernie Sanders. If many people don't notice, that's the same thing. That's the same exact thing the Hillary campaign did against Bernie Sanders and his supporters. They made them out to be crazy people, but of course on the left side of the spectrum instead of the right side. And in many cases, they acted like those two were the same, which was disgusting. That was disgusting in itself. But that's also what they did. So, yeah. So, but in this case, it's a whole thing of just making sure that putting out that warning signal, so that everybody knows that that Bernie Sanders is running, so that you can get prepared to attack him and dig up dirt on him and come up with different attack ads and shit like that, instead of going out there and talking to the to the people and using a real populist tone. They want to make things more establishment, more of a tone of basically being sneaky, doing things behind closed doors instead of being real and being upfront with everybody. So of course they can't do that. So they gotta do everything behind the back door. And that's just typical Hillary Clinton. That's typical like it was before. It was typical Hillary Clinton. Like it's going to be in the upcoming campaign, in the upcoming election in 2020. It's going to be like the typical Democratic establishment. And don't be surprised if you see the same tactics that were used in 2016 to be used in 2020.